And Brazil began your struggles with studios, which we're moving on to now. There was a whole book written about this, and it seems odd now when films like Lord of the Rings last for several days. But the first argument, it was over the length of the film.
That was the contractual stick they were hitting me with. The reality was they hated the film. It's even more complex. It isn't they hated the film. They thought it was potentially a great film. If only you could take out all those disturbing bits, all the bits that people aren't enjoying. And that's what it really came down to.
So what were the bits that in their terms had to go?
Well, the ending, first of all. You can't have an ending like that. They've got to drive off. They drive off in the truck at the end to the Happy Valley. Perfect ending.
Even if you're making a film set in a nightmare totalitarian future?
Yep. They literally could not accept the fact that I said, the story we agreed to tell was this, and this is the system, this is the way the cogs work in it. You just don't invent a happy ending at the end of this thing because you would like to have a happy ending. That's what happens. But the audience will get more people in if you put a happy ending on. I said, well, sorry. And I suppose I had been gearing up for this fight for a long time. And there it was. And it was so wonderful because Universal Studios, their building, their headquarters, is a black monolithic tower just like those in the film. It was bizarre. And suddenly here we had the situation of the guy against the bureaucracy. And I've always felt in many ways the films, what happens around the films, is what the films are about, and that was what this had.
So in this case, you became the Jonathan Pryce character.
Yeah, and I had to fight against the system. Or maybe I was the Robert De Niro character. I'm not sure which one. But all I knew, they were trying to stop this film, and they weren't never going to change it. And so let's go to war. And
one of your weapons in the war was these newspaper ads, pleading with them.
Well, it wasn't pleading, and it was Variety. It was the trade magazine, a full page ad, just a little black around the edge like Italian death notices. And then the rest was blank except for this nice little typewritten note in the middle, Dear Sid Sheinberg, the head of the studio. Dear Sid Sheinberg, when are you going to release my film Brazil, signed Terry Gilliam? That's all it said. and the fecal matters, the revolving blades at that point, because this is not what you're supposed to do. Things are done behind the scene in Hollywood. That's what you're supposed to do.
The reason traditionally people haven't behaved like that in Hollywood is that they were worried about the next job. That famous phrase, "You'll never eat lunch in this town again." Yeah. Did you not care about that?
No. My weakness is I'm sort of trapped in the present. I only live in the present. I don't care about past or the future. It's what's going on now, and that's what my problem was. Now was a film that I thought was an extraordinarily good film, and it was being stopped, and so that can't happen. I had seen other people, compromise before, and I don't think you win ultimately. You get destroyed, possibly personally. Luckily, we had a couple friends who were in the LA Critics, and we started these clandestine screenings around Hollywood for the film because it couldn't be shown. The studio would not allow the film to be shown, so we were doing it in people's homes. And they discovered in their bylaws that the bylaws were less clear, and the bylaws never said the film had to be released to qualify for their awards at the end of the year. And so now Brazil went into the competition even though it hadn't been released, and the studio had made public statements. It was unreleasable, it was unwatchable, it was a piece of shit, basically, is what they said. All the top guys, Lew Wasserman, Frank Price, Sid Sheinberg, all the big names had come out publicly. And on the night of Universal's greatest moment of the year, when Out of Africa was opening in New York and everybody was there, all dressed up at the big banquet, the LA Critics announced their film awards. Best Picture, Brazil. Best Screenplay, Brazil. Best Director, Brazil. Nobody had ever seen, and they had to release the film. And on it went.
So you won that one. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
I lost that one.
Yes, it's the one you lost, which we should talk about. This is where your reputation as a maniac who goes over budget comes from, because the budget was almost double.
Yep.
The film kept getting into financial trouble.
Yep.
It ends up in one of these amazing Hollywood stories. It ends up being run by Lloyd's of London. The insurers were running the production in the end. But that's where essentially everything went wrong on that film.
Here's the story about the world's greatest liar. And I had a producer who was the Munchausen of the piece, who The first budget came in at $60 million. We'd raised $23.5 million. He fired the accountant. Next accountant came in, $40 million, fired him. The fourth one said, 23.5. That was it. And so he had found the accountant. The studio was doing this film. I had storyboarded the entire film. I never hide anything. I'm blatantly honest and open about everything. There's all the information there. The company that was the completion guarantor, the insurance company, had all the information in front of them. The completion guarantor who had made Brazil, who liked me a lot because we came in under budget on Brazil, refused to do Munchausen. Another one came in. There were only 117 prints of the film ever made for America. And so it was a flop, even though it got great reviews and was doing really good business. But it was at a time the company was selling itself. So anyway, it doesn't matter. That's the truth. But the reality is I got the blame for it because it was my comeuppance. It was like, moments, all film directors want to be Orson Welles. Well, I got my moment. I did my Citizen Kane in Brazil, and then I did my Magnificent Ambersons with Munchausen.
And Brazil, there was a whole book written about it. Don Quixote, there was famously a whole documentary made about the failure to make the film. I've seen it 3 or 4 times now, and there are scenes that I find almost physically impossible to look at when the things start going wrong, particularly when the set is washed away by a storm. It amazed me you got through it without having a nervous breakdown or a heart attack or something. But did you ever feel in serious threat of cracking up?
No, I was relieved, to be quite honest, because I actually thought we were in much deeper shit than what you see on film. I thought it was going to come down. If we survived that first week, it was going to come down in the third week. It was going to get bad. The thing was, I think it was under budgeted. It was prepared all right, but there were a lot of problems waiting to bite. And I'm really aware of everything. I mean, I talk to a lot of directors who don't seem to know what's going on around them. They just get on with it. I'm aware of all the problems, and I worry about all of them. That's what I do. We'd been a long time trying to get that project off the ground. It had been started and stopped 3 times. I was actually quite exhausted by the time we got there, and that's why when the heavens open up, I'm laughing. I mean, it's what else can you do? It's like, wow, this is madness. And there was a strange sense of, I'm glad God got the blame and not me.
Yes! Whoa! Which is it, King Lear or Wizard of Oz?
I can't watch the documentary. I mean, I've watched it enough times and I just can't do it. So, but it was, it's the moment when somebody said there's a moment when I'm watching, there's a scene on the screen and my face is gone. And that's when I know it's really over. Because I literally think I am berserk on every level. I will go right till I die to make something, but at a certain point you realize it's just not gonna happen. And that's when it really hits. But there was a weird sense of relief as well. So
and that's the difference. Whereas Orson Welles, Magnificent Ambersons, the studio interfered, he walked away from it and went and made Sherry commercials and virtually never made another film. You're the exact opposite. You just, no matter what happens, you keep going on to the next project.
Because there's, I don't know, I just feel I don't know what else to do, frankly. I mean, it's what I'm reasonably good at. It's what I like, what gives kind of meaning to things. And there's a lot of people that I work with that need the work as well. So there's a kind of responsibility to keep making movies. There's good people out there, and we like working together. And sometimes some of them don't get that many other jobs. But I think it's also that awful thing of each time when you're making a film, for a brief moment, life makes sense. You're trapped in that story. There's parameters here. I understand existence within those terms. And that's what you do. And then it finishes. And then there's this chaos that starts up again, this senseless world that's out there. And then you start sliding into depression. And I've got to find a story. I've got to find something to cling to again. And since you give up Jesus, you got to find something else.
We talked earlier about the fact that as a child you had a sense of having, mission is probably not too strong a word, that you had this talent, you had to do something with it. Do you feel that you've accomplished that?
No, because it's unless what I fear is the talent may have dried up, and I have to keep testing to find out if it's still there. That's what it's about. No, I wish I felt satisfied, but I don't. I mean, I feel, and it's this problem of living in the present. The present is all I know. It's like an infinite presence, and if I'm not feeling like I'm achieving something, it's kind of an empty place. It's weird, and so I'm always surprised when I go somewhere and people run up and say, "Oh, I love your films." It always comes as a surprise to me because I actually don't think of myself as anything other than trying to get the next job, trying to do something, trying to think of something worth doing.
But I suppose the difficulty is if you're working outside, you're not making the obvious box office hits. They're unlikely to win Oscars. It's what the measure of success would be. That's presuming the difficulty. There's no obvious...
Yeah, there's that. But I think I do sense the measure of success. I know there are enough people that are passionate about what I've done, that have made a difference to them, that have made them actually see life differently. And they bump up into me every month or so, and that's kind of, I know, well, that's pretty good. No, I don't judge success on sort of Hollywood standards, to be honest. I mean, box office success is great because it allows the next project to happen more easily. That's all it's about, nothing more than that. And it's nice to know that you reach a larger audience. That's good too. But I'm less concerned about the size of the audience. It's more about the intensity of their experience that intrigues me.
I finally want to ask about hair because it's a largely theoretical subject for me, but it's been important for you. But even now, well into your 60s, you maintain the ponytail. It's a rebellion of some kind.
I don't know what. No, it's kind of an aide-memoire. That's what it is. Since my memory is so bad, I have to retain that to feel it, to say, oh, once upon a time there was hair that went down there. I'm not just this aging creature. It's probably kind of umbilicus is what it is.
Terry Gilliam, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a good one to end on.
And stay with us for Terry Gilliam's cult classic Brazil next.
They've given her a bed, but taken away her home. In March this year, Panorama reported on a scandal, the NHS National Home Swindle, how sick and elderly people are unlawfully forced to sell their homes to pay for care. After the programme, thousands of viewers emailed and called in with their own shocking